And welcome to Ben's Junk, which this week is brought to you by...
Your choice, just $249 at all Menard locations. There's one near you.
Save big money at Menards.
And also brought to us by Mother Nature. There's a bit of a storm brewing outside as I'm recording this. It looks like my weather warnings episode might come true. But I guess it's appropriate, and I'm certainly going to run with it because, frankly, it fits my mood about this whole thing. So anyway, let me set this up. I was talking to a friend about a month or two ago about the dilemma of trying to record TV, off-air TV these days, particularly for those of us without a DVR. And there's very few standalone DVRs anymore, and I think all the ones on the market now are encrypted. So much for archiving the material. But also, unless you just happen to get one of those last ones from maybe about 10 years ago with all the right in and outputs and the lack of encryption, you're kind of stuck. So, I mean, I guess you can, if you've still got the gear, use tapes or a DVD recorder, but using the old stuff, you can't maintain a modern high-def signal. Well, it just so happened that I, around the same time, was talking to a viewer who's also based out of South Dakota, who told me that the regional hardware store chain Menards was selling these tuner boxes at their store, and they happen to have USB ports, and as the box says, will record off air. And I thought, well, great, that's a simple, elegant solution. Just record it to flash drives or a hard drive or whatever. Wonderful. So I popped down to, as I am known to call it, Svenards.
Vampires and mummies, you'll meet big dummies when you shop Menards.
Your wallet has more teeth at Menards.
Grave digging mummies at Menards.
So glad I have an excuse to reference that one now. So anyway, they had plenty of these things in stock, and about $40 later, I was ready to, within reason, at least somewhat drag the whole VHS, Betamax, etc. concept into the 21st century. And then the troubles began. Oh, there's some thunder for you. Anyway, right out of the gate, I had nothing but problems. And it came down to not just the big stuff, but also the little stuff, like the batteries that came for use with the remote. They didn't work. And I mean, I'm willing to forgive that if the product is good, but since it's on very thin ice with me right now, I feel like I should mention it. And for what it's worth, I do have the gear to check them, so I figured I would do that. And the voltage was there, but the resistance was not. So anyway, let's start breaking this down. We were talking about the remote there, so let's start with that. Here it is. It's kind of debatable as to how well laid out the thing is. It seems like I have to spend a lot of time staring at it and looking for the button that I want. And if you look around the arrow keys, there's a lot of kind of double meaning buttons there. So anyway, the remote is only the box is only semi-responsive to the remote. It seems like when I press a button, it only registers maybe every other time. And I mean, your aim has to be perfect. If you are not square on the unit, you're just going to be punching buttons till there's no tomorrow. And you might do that anyway, because it seems like sometimes to make it actually understand its own function, you have to hit it 5 or 6 times. Either that or it's just got some very serious lag, which is probably really more what it is. But anyway, when you're in the menu, most of the buttons on the remote function as arrow keys, including the number buttons. If I can make the camera focus there. There we go. And that kind of sets the tone for the whole thing. And when you're in the menu of the unit, the menu is completely unintuitive. But I think that's going to be a lot better served by me just taking the camcorder, pointing it at the TV, and going over it in real time. So let's do that. All right, I've got it zoomed out a bit so you can keep an eye on the tuner a bit, and hopefully the monitor is reasonably straight. But I guess that's not really too important here. So let's get this thing going, and I have to be real good and precise. All right. And I have to keep two remotes on me to keep the pop-ups at bay. So there's the boot screen. All right, there we go. And hey, Antenna TV is not doing bad. Was that 75, 80%? But let's get to the menu before Sony comes down at me for showing the Jeffersons. So here's the menu. And let's just go over the big stuff. So under the program menu here, the only thing of note, the only thing that has any sort of impact would be the EPG, Electronic Programming Guide. And it's only as good as the signal strength, but that's not really a problem right now. Maybe I can find one that's not doing too well. We got some weather warnings going on here. So KWSD never comes in well, but it's still kind of sort of bringing up the menu. But yeah, it's always kind of a mess. And that cannot be right for signal strength. Or maybe it's lack thereof, and I've just been misinterpreting it this whole time. I wouldn't put it past this, and none of this is listed in the manual, so you just kind of have to know. So anyway, let's get back to Antenna TV, just because it's reliable, and back to the menu. So let's move on to picture here. Now, Antenna TV is, I believe, the last TV station around here that still broadcasts in 4x3. And I have found that you have to keep the box here set to pillar box, because otherwise you're going to get stretch-o-vision. So let's see if I can make that happen here. There we go. So yeah, it's all kind of wonky right now. And we'll reset it, and it will take way too long. There we go. Resolution. You can do all the biggies. 480, 720, and 1080, I and P for all of them. I've got it at 1080p. And we're in America, so NTSC. Now, you would think to get back to the top, to go across the icons along the top of the picture, you would just be able to scroll. But it doesn't work like that. So you think maybe hit menu again, but that doesn't work either. So you have to hit exit before you can get back up there. So one more counterintuitive thing about this. Channel search. Now, on my old RCA box, for manual search, you can just punch in a channel, whether it exists or not, and it will remember it. You cannot do this with this, and do that with this. And it's kind of annoying, and it kind of negates the purpose as far as I'm concerned. Because, like, I would love to punch in channel 3 because there's the option for cable. But it doesn't acknowledge my cable box, at least. It doesn't acknowledge anything I plug in. Antenna power. It makes no difference whether I have it on or off. If I try and turn it on, it just kicks itself back off. It doesn't care what I have it set to. So, moving on. The one and only thing about this whole menu setup that makes sense, time. It is the only thing self-explanatory to it. So, there's a plus, I guess. Now, we got a couple bits of English going on here. So, in this case, it's not closed captioning, it's close captioning, or close captioning if you prefer. And let's see, digital audio, you can set it to whatever you like, but if the channel is in Dolby Digital, which I think most, if not all of them are now, it just kicks into that. So whatever you have it set to doesn't seem to make a difference, at least in my experience. System, I don't have any kids, but I guess you could put a cap at TV PG or whatever you like. Software update, which is only good for the USB but I haven't felt a need to play with it. I feel like I've got it working just enough that I don't dare question it. And then lastly, USB. I don't have anything hooked up at the moment, but it will let me in the menu. So multimedia, and I have tested all this. So you can play the real big types of files like MP3s or WAV. So you can play music on here. It's acknowledged JPEG photos for me, so that worked. The only thing that I really had an issue with, and it was a minor one, was I instinctively went to movie for my recordings that I made with this thing, because that's what you would think it would be in the eyes of a computer. But no, it's, and it makes perfect sense, PVR, personal video recorder. What movie is for any existing stuff. It'll play MP4 files. So if you download movies, purchase and download movies, I very rarely do that. Like I'll do the odd riff tracks occasionally for the stuff that just, isn't going to make it to a hard copy. And I prefer hard copies, but yeah, that works. I've run Oddity archive episodes through it. It all works beautifully. And our other bit of English there, not find any USB device, or just bad translation. So anyway, let's get back to the menu here. The only other thing I can think of is Pvr Configure. Now, you'd think it would let you play with the compression settings, but it doesn't really do much of anything. Again, not find any USB device. It lets you set a cap for recording, and it's got a good efficient compression going on. So I haven't done any real long recordings, but I suppose if I really wanted to make sure I got everything, I would just go as far as it could. So 4 gigabytes, which it seems like it was about 1 gigabyte for 45 minutes. So 3 hours, I guess, would be your maximum record time. Then you'd have to either start over or put in another flash drive. But yeah, most flash drives and all that stuff nowadays have a lot more than 4 gigs on them. Oh well. But anyway, that is everything of note with this. And I definitely don't want any trouble with Johnny Carson's people, so we'll keep that covered. But anyway, let's tear this back down and go back to our original setting, and then I'm really going to lay into this sucker. All right, here we are back again, and I'll splice pertinent stuff into this. But let's get on to the really egregious stuff. So we've already been over the remote. We've already been over the menu. So let's start with the tuner. The tuner on this thing is the weakest one I have ever encountered. And it's really, I'd imagine, only good if you've got a real nice, really powerful rooftop antenna and you're in a good position, like nice and high on a hill and reasonably close to the transmitters. But I don't have anything like that, and I don't really want anything like that. I mean, I grudgingly have cable, but I've only got basic cable, so I can at least watch the local stuff. And so with this and my antenna setup, I'm kind of stuck with a pair of rabbit ears and a 24 dB booster. And to put this in perspective, I've got an old, and if you've watched Archive enough times, you've seen my old RCA, what's that called, analog digital converter box. And I think it was one of the ones that the government was handing out back in '09 during the digital switchover. And that thing, for how cheap it is, it's actually way more reliable. I mean, I can hook that up and it will acknowledge most of the local channels and latch onto about half of those. As for this unit, I can get it to acknowledge at the best of times about half of them and latch onto maybe 3. I think there's about 20 to choose from, if I'm not mistaken, if you count all the sub-channels. So that's a massive negative. And when you're recording on this, you cannot do anything else, including accessing the menu. And there's a clock that runs on screen so you know how long you've been recording. which isn't too bad, but you'd think they would just put it on the display, but we're talking cheap stuff here. So what else? There's only one input, and I'll have to splice in a picture of the rear of the unit. It is coax input only, RF. So it would be really, really nice if there was an HDMI input, if there was a composite input, component input. But by the same token, the coax input works surprisingly well. It does maintain the full high-def signals. And thankfully, it carries over to the recordings. And that's really this thing's only saving grace, but I'm not quite ready for that yet. So my other biggest complaint was that this unit will not pass a signal. It will only do antenna stuff. So I tried to hook up the cable box. Didn't work. I tried to hook up just an old VCR. Wouldn't work. Tried to run different items through different things. Maybe there was some sort of encryption going on. No dice. All I can do is make it work with an antenna. So nothing digital or analog, just antenna. And well, I guess that is digital, but you know what I mean, a third party, so to speak. Now, getting on to the recordings here, that's where this thing kept itself from going to the garbage. Actually, I had something much worse in mind. The recordings are shockingly good. I mean, it maintains the picture just wonderfully. And I mean, if you're watching a sub channel that's already very heavily compressed, all that artifacting is, of course, still there, but it doesn't introduce any more artifacting. And I really, really like that. And whatever compression setting it's using is really nice and really efficient. So, yeah, really, I was going to end this episode very differently. I was so ticked off at this. I mean, I was more ticked off at this than anything I have ever covered on this show in almost a decade now. And I was going to go out tomorrow morning and take a sledgehammer to it and do it on camera. I was so ticked at this thing. But it was only when I was doing the recording tests that it spared itself from the wrath of my good old metal sledgehammer. So, yeah, it just survives by the skin of its teeth. And that's a shame because there's a lot of potential here. Like I said, I'd love to see more inputs on it. I'd love to see it just be more flexible, a better designed menu. There is lots of potential here, and maybe somebody will come up with a higher end version of one of these things. And maybe it's out there and I'm just not privy to it. Let me know in the comments if you've seen anything like that. But for $40 from Menards, even that's a bit questionable. And I'm kind of wary of using this for, as I mentioned earlier, there's kind of a storm brewing outside. Well, when I was doing the final test, getting all this set up just to make sure things were still working, a full-on cut-in weather warning happened. And I tried to record it. Thankfully, I had a flash drive on me. And unfortunately, the signal strength, it was on the PBS affiliate, the signal strength was only 20, maybe 30%. And so it just cuts out all the time. And it's almost a loss. But I've got plenty of recordings to show you here. And you can really see it run the gamut from the really good ones to the unwatchable and all points in between. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up for me on the vocal front for today. I'll leave you with plenty of footage. I've done a lot of it over the last few days. So yeah, that is it for me, as I said, on the vocal front for today. I will talk to you again soon.
Oral exams, cleanings, and x-rays. Plus, you'll save on fillings, crowns, and other dental procedures. And you can't be turned down because of age or pre-existing conditions. With a large network of dentists and specialists,
Kohler's walk-in bath was designed with convenient handrails for added stability and safety. The wide ergonomic seat is tilted back for comfort and stability. Deep soaking experience.
Honey, are you seeing this? Like a lot of people, I'm really attached to my home. I couldn't imagine living anywhere else.
Weather changes constantly. Be prepared by using the First Alert weather app. From viewing conditions with our Doppler radar to just a simple temp check, you can be sure to stay informed with the First Alert weather app. It's weather when you want it.
Take the crown. Visit Royal River in Flandreau. Royal River is reeling in royals and giving away a Crestliner 1650 Fishhawk fishing boat on April 24th. Earn entries daily now and play every Friday and Saturday for your chance to win free slot play or cash.
Looking for a home run on your next home project? Don't strike out by using someone out of left field who makes errors, balks at your needs, isn't safe, and gives you the squeeze by charging double.
The device man is never by Harold Zinzo.
Life can be helps keep money.
And yes, there could be some snow on the western part morning. 6 inches plus in the Black Hills. Now, let's talk about this. I said it's going to rain for 3 days. The forecast models want to really soak us, especially the area in purple, which is Brookings down to Sioux Falls, Beersford, along I-29 to southwest Minnesota.
And the Minnehaha.
Plumbing, electrical appliances too. The savings will always come right back to you. You'll save big money when you shop Menard.